Okay, this is the first of my reflections for my PD1 class. Um, this one is over Unit 1. A lot of technical jargon that I'm not going to get into, but suffice it to say that since the 70s and advancement in medical technology, we are able to see how the brain works in real time. We've also been able to explore the intricacies of how the brain works to some pretty minute detail. Um, Different areas of the brain working in conjunction with one another, how the different areas of the brain are stimulated for learning, stimulated during normal activities such as eating, sleeping, reading, watching a television program, etc. All of these things, all of these observations have given us great insight as to how the brain works, which as a teacher is good because that allows us to be able to adjust our teaching style and our teaching practices to how the student's brain more readily accepts new knowledge. Of course, there are many other factors besides just pure physiology that go into it, such as nutrition, exercise, any kind of developmental delays or developmental problems in the child that may extend up into early adulthood and even adulthood. For instance, my son is very dyslexic. When he writes, it looks like a constant stream of letters. There's no spaces between the letters, etc. So that meant whenever I had to help him with his math, I had to come up with ways for him to be able to absorb the knowledge. He's a kinesthetic learner, so I had to make manipulatives for him to use to be able to get across stuff like algebra, you know, fractions, simple arithmetic, stuff like that. For him, he can't abstract a number. A 1 is just not a 1. A 3 is just not a 3. It's got to be 3 of something for him to be able to see how it works. Him being able to understand something like this on the board behind me, which is just a graph of two, piecewise functions, he simply can't do it. Now then you put geometry in front of him and he can tell you every angle, every length, everything about the shape. So knowing what happens in the brain, knowing how a child's brain works, and each child's brain works a little bit differently, allows us as teachers to be able to reach the student in different ways. Some students respond purely by, you just tell them the idea, you tell them how to do something and they instantly grasp it. Some kids, they need to read it. Some kids need to read and hear. Some kids need to manipulate something. They need to see it in action, So becoming a teacher, I need to be able to make sure that my lesson plans are encompass all those ideas, which is going to be, terribly challenging to try to reach a segment of the class that's this way and a segment of the class that's that way and a segment, etc. One way I could do that is to group up the students and making sure that each group has a member that learns a different way. Each member learns a different way. That way they can teach one another. They can come up with different ideas and different ways of explaining something that I've taught, but they might be able to reach the student in a different manner and help them to be able to absorb it. It also teaches stuff like teamwork and being able to get along with others and getting past one another's cultural differences. Another thing that affects learning is nutrition and exercise. I know myself, if I'm not eating right and I'm not exercising correctly, I'm not going to absorb knowledge very well and very quickly at all. So making sure that the students eat right, which I realize I only have so much of a hand in that. I don't know what's going on at their home. But making sure that the students eat right and get an amount of exercise is something I'm going to have to push upon them, because that will help them. It will help their little brains absorb this influx of knowledge throughout their 8-hour academic day. There are also cultural issues that I'm going to have to work around. I mean, not only the different cultures, Asian cultures and European cultures and African cultures, etc., that each have different ways of expressing ideas which aren't going to be like mine, but I need to learn how to work around those and try to encompass those things into my lesson plan to make sure that I reach those kids. And then of course there's more subcultures of different socioeconomic classes, which is probably going to be the biggest challenge, although I have more experience in that. I mean, I know that different socioeconomic classes place different importance on education. To generationally poor people, education means nothing. I mean, it's all, for them, it's all about escapism, trying to escape their situation. While at the same time keeping one another in the situation that they're in, because they pool their resources together, and then if one person makes better of himself and goes away, that's less resources for the rest of the group. So trying to fight that is going to be difficult. There's lots of demands on students now with athletics and socializing and things that detract from their attention. Video games, sports, the pretty girl in Mr. Swan's math class. So trying to teach the kids how to focus and how to be persistent about their studies and don't give up on stuff is also going to be a bit of a challenge. But it'll be easier if, all the other factors are met and at least dealt with, like nutrition and exercise and getting past socioeconomic class norms, cultural norms and differences. That last step in trying to teach a student how to be accountable by getting rid of all the other distractions, that's probably, of all the things, that's going to be the easiest thing to do. Only I realize I'm only going to have 1 hour out of their day to try to make that big positive influence on them. Well, like I said, this chapter wasn't, this unit wasn't terribly enlightening. I mean, I've had a class where we went over this kind of stuff in much more detail, so I've had some time to develop some opinion on it. I actually can't wait to move on to other stuff, how to actually reach those kids, how to instill confidence and respect and persistence in them, and push them to be better students. Yeah, that's it. That's all I can think of right now. This will be kind of like a running journal for me as I go through this semester. This will be quite interesting. I'll be interested to see what the rest of my videos look like. Plus, it's good practice on making videos. Thank you.